My schedule's crazy. We're in the middle of a rescue kitty situation. So I'm going to start putting you on speakerphone to flesh stuff out when I can, as I can. I don't know how all these people put out all these videos as often as they do, or how they even pay attention to more than one case at a time, because it's hard for me just to stay on top of this one. And the closer this trial gets, the more I'm trying to stay focused. Hang on. I'm turning. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing a little bit of that. When you're driving, you turn the radio down, even though you're just trying to see better. I know where backwards shit starts, but I am really struggling with how it catches on. I guess because I don't listen to Murder Sheet, and people framing Mr. Allen's expert fund as anything other than an expert fund, I don't understand them. We are not out here attaching some man to the girls. That was not us. We are not the ones who put this man's name in a search warrant. We didn't manipulate witness statements to get that search warrant. And we didn't lie about what we got from that search warrant in order to arrest him. None of us took a man from his family and locked him away in a maximum security prison while we investigated. That's not normal. It's not okay. And to smear anybody saying, hey, this is not how we do things, to smear them as child murderer defenders, when the state themselves are still telling us that they're investigating because this thing is not solved. That's the other thing. I'm going to start getting nitpicky on certain posts because I'm trying to see if there's any wiggle room with some people to use their own logic with certain things. I've gotten some pretty interesting DMs because I'm trying to understand where they're coming from and what they're actually mad about, to see if maybe there is, as this trial gets closer, I don't think these people are worth the effort, but I do think the case is worth the effort to try to see, even if they're Hail Marys, if we can find some sort of shared reality, some sort of baseline to neutralize all the bullshit so that we can just focus on the actual shit that matters, like what happened to the girls. We can't ever get to that because we have to, there's this increasing hill of bullshit accusations and smears from people who are not thinking things through. The state's theory, for it to be true, it would mean that Mr. Allen is the person who solved this murder, not the police. You solve murders with sound police work that can be verified and evidence that can be scrutinized, not through tips that came in through a tip line that you then attach a dirty cop's name who's been in trouble for lying to get search warrants before. You can't just put his name on it as the person who followed up on it and send it to a judge to get rubber stamped. And you can't just summarize that tip narrative without verifying who contributed what part of that narrative to it. Which part of that narrative came from Mr. Allen and which part came from Mr. Doolin. You can't just submit a request and get information to find out, hey, with this police function, can I get some clarification on the CJIS versus the Orion stuff? There's no clarification on these ORI numbers. The distinctions are not being made in documents for me to be able to say, I'm having to make educated guesses because attempts to confirm it with official sources are being shut down. In the beginning, it was nonstop. And then Unified Command, I'm not real sure what they were doing other than clearing everybody with very little effort. And a lot of times when new information would come in much later, once they were cleared, nobody even just for due diligence checked it out. In some cases, like the person who verified Brad Holder's alibi is a sheriff from Pulaski. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Not that I say anything right, but you know what I mean. I understand there were lots of agencies and departments who lent personnel to Carroll County for the first month especially. They were just lending their officers just extra boots on the ground. You need someone to go track down someone. You need someone to go run into town to meet this person, to take this statement. in general, it's heartwarming to see how many officers from across the state dropped everything and just showed up, put me to work, tell me what you need. But like, if Brad Holder's getting this many tips called in on him, it might make sense for someone who's assisting with the case. Like, you might want to pick someone who's from the area of that particular person of interest to follow up on something like an alibi. But the other thing I didn't realize, Ferenczi emailed Liggett in December of 2018. And he emailed Liggett to say, I think we should give Brad's alibi another look. I don't remember that, but that is important. And Ferenczi is the one who dug up that video of Patrick Westfall. And he's the one who was... Him, Click, and Murphy had put together 9 different side-by-sides of Brad Holder's social media and Elvis Field's social media. So when the defense attorneys are deposing like Holman and those clowns, defense is showing them these side-by-side photos. Doesn't this look similar? And they're pretending like they don't look similar. And that defense is just so ridiculous for even suggesting that these two photos would be similar, as if the defense attorneys are just desperate, grasping at straws because they're dirtbag defense attorneys. Well, it turns out those the dirtbags who compiled all that stuff was Ferenczi and Click and Murphy. Very well-respected, thorough, competent detectives with years of experience doing this shit. Liggett was still promising to go to detective school in 2016. He has no experience in this kind of shit. The only other case of child murder in that county, like, he didn't help with that effort. That was passed on. Other people investigated the Flores shit. Carroll County did not serve any useful purpose. They didn't know shit. They weren't looking for shit. They didn't give a shit. So I don't really know what experience we're supposed to rely on. And I don't think I realized how dumb Holman was until I was reading through, like, specifically, because I'm trying to do this in chronological order. So I was pulling out all the information, searching through the document for all of Holman's statements, and compiling them all into one little document so that I could grab all of those things and then eliminate the repetitive information and put it into more of just a comprehensive, easy to digest summary. And also so I can get on my footnotes, because I like to do footnotes. I like to do citations. I don't like to put anything in those kind of videos where I can't put a timestamp in the video with a link taking you directly to the page number I'm on, so that they can actually look at it and see that I'm not bullshitting, that I'm not misquoting or mischaracterizing. I try to be as true to the original statement as possible, and I actually do my best to be as generous as possible in interpreting their statements. I know I'm not real generous when it comes to evaluating their character or lack thereof. I'm not going to take them out of context just because I think they're a shit person. Sometimes we need time to process stuff. And sometimes some people have more time to process that than others. And I just don't think people who are learning about this stuff for the first time, I don't fault them for just being shocked. Because that shit was shocking. For anybody who'd never heard of this, as that all unfolded, I remember being surprised by how many people started coming forward. Like, oh yeah, I'm an Odinist too. Oh yeah, my son, oh yeah, my dad is too. That blew me away. And I do think it's funny because, as prevalent as it is, there's clearly people who have still never heard of it. Even in those areas. For how prevalent it is, it's still, I guess it really just depends on your environment. There is so much, and I keep thinking, oh man, I'm almost done. And then I research it one more time to see, okay, let me search this person, make sure I didn't leave anything out. And then I'm like, wait, did I check the second Franks and third Franks? Did I check the record of proceedings? I'm hoping to get it done in time to where it can actually help us get on the same page. I know my sparkling personality doesn't always translate well, but basically, for the same reason that I ended up posting the reenactments, I think it's helpful for us to have some sort of shared reality that we can all agree on, like as a starting point, before we diverge into areas of disagreement. Because sometimes I'm not sure we even have a shared reality, and I find that to be strange. And so that's also why I'm trying to be as, like with those reenactments, I try to make it as close to the state's theory of the case as possible. Even though that theory is problematic, their timeline is problematic, I still tried to be as true to that as possible, so that when we're talking about why it's problematic, it stays focused on why their theory is problematic, as opposed to my personal belief or interpretation, if that makes sense. I'm trying to do that with the Franks memo. I know some people mistake a lot. Like, some people still think defense was twisting the Odin report and all these other things. No. Even that, when Sleuth Intuition was talking about Patrick Westfall and the Fort Wayne thing, that was not something defense dug up in order to bolster their claims or to make something more colorful. The reason they cited that video was because Ferenczi emailed it to Liggett. He sent him a link with some commentary and questions, in addition to asking Liggett if they need to reevaluate Holder's alibi, and had a whole bunch of questions about Brad Holder because they had started investigating these people. And like, I didn't even realize until these really thorough readings and rereadings of some of this information, I thought that defense was contributing their own part to the theory, but there's very few things that came from them that was not based on the track that Ferenczi, Click, and Murphy were on. I think it's actually pretty impressive that they were able to put anything coherent together, considering how much information they had to go through in such a little amount of time. And I don't think they would have been able to put any of it together if it weren't for Todd Click, because Murphy, Ferenczi, and Click had done so much footwork, and no matter how many times I go back and read that thing, I always come across stuff that feels brand new, that I don't remember. There's so many dates that are important, and they're not in chronological order. It's partly why I'm trying to go back through to see if that will help us to understand also the timing. One of the things we always talk about is the timing of stuff is very interesting. The state is suggesting those summaries should be taken at face value and being real petty, as if this is just some sort of competitive sport and not part of a process designed to find out what the fuck actually happened. We're not going to do the defense's work for them, as if the defense ever asked anybody to do that for them. The prosecutor is so busy scheming, and the judge is so busy bubble wrapping him on his first big case. It's wild. Those interviews were probably, to anybody who is being honest with themselves, those interviews were more likely than not exculpatory. It's very strange when the defense attorneys are the only people left in the courtroom doing anything that will lead us in a direction towards finding out what happened to the girls. And I think some people may have developed their entire personality around Nick McClelland. That man has spent more time getting hair plugs and taking in all of his slacks than he has done investigating this. That dummy accepted a pinky promise from the sheriff and the chief of police without any receipts. I don't know how this is fail son territory. But I wanted to bring this back up to remind people why it's important to be able to compare a summary of something law enforcement came away from. Because until that cell phone footage came out, this is what Minneapolis Police Department told us with certainty what happened to George Floyd and how it came about. This press release is a result of the involved officers' summary of events. This is a result of them making judgments based on those summaries without being able to see the footage of the people involved and what they said. That's why defense could have used those interviews. That's not something the prosecutor just gets to decide is some sort of desperate plea from the defense. If he honestly actually thinks that, and it's not actually a desperate ploy from the prosecutor, then it's scary if he actually does believe that. If he is that dumb and he is in that position, I don't think he's dumb, but I do think he's the desperate one. And the other thing, one of those things that really irritates me is that because he was dumb enough to take the investigator's word without any receipts, he is now trying to gaslight other people into thinking it's absurd for anybody to think there could have been something valuable to this investigation in those interviews. So number one, fuck him for that. I don't like manipulative people, and I don't like it when they use certain institutions that are supposed to exist for justice. They're using it to cover their own ass, their own failures. He is not taking responsibility for anything. I don't like people like that in general, and I especially don't like it when they have been handed a seat of power. The only reason he got elected again is because he was appointed first. Who else was running? Nobody. That's what we call it, failing upwards. People need to separate the person from the institution. You are not honoring the institutions, the laws of this land, and all of our wonderful values. You are not honoring them by lowering the bar for what is appropriate for someone in a position of power to ensure the integrity of that system. If they are dumb, reckless, or manipulative, you do not have to cover for them or whitewash them in order to be the good guy, just because that is the side that's typically associated with the good guy. I don't know where people get this idea that defense attorneys are just dirtbags trying to get murderers out of trouble and back on the streets, as if defense attorneys don't have families, like they're just cool with murderers walking around. I don't know. I mean, I do know where that started, but I don't know how it caught on. I understand prosecutors have been pushing that dumb shit. If a guilty person is not convicted, it's because the state failed their duty to the victim, not because some defense attorney found a loophole. They're not loopholes, they're not technicalities, they're laws. There's a reason we place the burden of proving what did or didn't happen on a prosecutor and not a criminal defendant. I think that should be obvious, but for some reason, people think that we need these criminal defendants to prove it. If you don't see the problem of leaving that burden to the defendant as opposed to the prosecutor, I'm not sure you should be allowed to use scissors unsupervised. On the same note, if you still don't see after looking at this press release why defense attorneys are necessary to this process, you can use scissors, but only the little short ones that are rounded off at the end. And so many people come up with these wild theories and more complicated what ifs, hypotheticals of how Richard Allen could actually be the guy that there's no digital or physical evidence was ever there. I mean, when we're talking location data from a geofence, if they're getting stuff from Google or different apps that would be on someone's phone using the location, that shit refreshes like every 2 minutes, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, but at least every 10 minutes. So unless you were going to come up with some complicated theory about how he got from the bridge to the crime scene in 2 minutes and gone, and that's why he didn't register in the geofence data, he was not anywhere even within 100 yards of it. It's out of control. Like, they can't place him there. They've got this bullet that they can't even link to when they're saying was ejected to the place they found it. At a certain point, if you are seriously considering every possibility other than the one that maybe they got the wrong guy, you might not be thinking clearly. If you are just convinced based on that, I pray to God you and someone you love never goes to a park where a crime they had no idea was going to happen an hour or two later. I hope they're nowhere near, and I hope they're not dumb enough to call the police to try to help them. As these law enforcement officers were making very emotional pleas to the public for anybody with any information who was anywhere near the area that day to please come forward and let law enforcement decide if they had any valuable information or not. They first started out asking anybody here from this time to that time, and then they just asked anybody with any information from that day in that area of any kind. Please bring it to us and let us decide. Please tell us if you saw anybody, and if you think you didn't see anything, contact us anyway, and let us decide. Give us your phone, the serial number from your phone. Now we know that was because they were going to do geofence shit. Well, Mr. Allen did all that. He wasn't registered in it. He probably wouldn't have given it to them if he was there trying to, cover his ass. And they got all his devices. So, even with the Hoosier Hardware store, that car, even if that was Mr. Allen's car on that video, which we don't know, because Liggett and Mullen are the only people who went back and looked at it, the current prosecutor has never seen that. We are literally taking Liggett and Mullen at their word, even though they have proven themselves to be untrustworthy, unreliable. We're supposed to take their word for it when nobody's seen it. But even if it was Mr. Allen's car on that video, it was driving away from the scene 30 minutes before the girls even showed up and at least an hour before the crime happened. I don't know what else people need to consider that maybe the people who couldn't even keep track of their own interviews, maybe they're the ones who are mistaken. Maybe they got something wrong. If you think it's a conspiracy theory to say that Mr. Allen went to the same trail that dozens of people went to and then went home just like the other dozens of people, that's the least crazy theory of any kind about what happened that day. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise. He wasn't by the crime scene when the crime happened. What else do people need to start looking for whoever was at that scene at that time? People are less concerned with that than they are trying to figure out why, even though there's no evidence of him there, how can we put him there in our minds and in our hearts? Any way other than in reality. Why can't we just look for the person whose phone that was? And why didn't law enforcement do that? They got all his phones, they found out it wasn't him, and then they stopped looking. I don't know how people aren't more mad about that than anything the defense attorneys have done. Especially when they're doing their job. And they're doing a good job. I think it's a shame that these girls got stuck with the people they got stuck with investigating this. These people's families were contacting law enforcement because they thought they were involved, because of very specific things they said, because of the behavioral changes, because of all the things law enforcement asked anybody who noticed this or that, please call us. Let us look into it. So those people did. And after the people who looked into it passed it on to where the buck is supposed to stop, it stopped without any further investigation. And the people who made that poor judgment call have been playing nice with the family, giving them a false sense of security. My point is, I don't know if it's the dyslexia shit. I don't know if it's just the older I get, our brains get tired. But there's so many different revolving aspects to this because it went on for so long. It's hard to keep it all straight, which is why I do put them in a video, because it's just helps me keep it straight. And it's I like having a resource where I can just scroll through quickly and just double check it. It also helps me retain the information better. And I keep thinking, oh man, I'm almost done. But I'll probably go through the end of 2023, and then at some point we'll do a follow-up just for 2024, because there's so many things that keep changing that I think that's what's holding me up. And anyway, there's a lot of stuff that I'm getting clarity on, and that I am seeing, okay, this was not as sus as I thought. Some stuff is way more sus than I thought, but other stuff isn't. And so it's helping me kind of better filter what's what. So I'm trying to get it done. Anyway, I'm doing my best. I'm working on it. I don't know how all these people put out so many videos as often as they do, because, man, I can rarely be in one place at one time. Like, I've resorted to using a car trip to kind of flesh something out. Anyway, I'm going to get back to it. And yeah, that's it.